IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship season heads north of the border to beautiful and historic Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in Ontario, Canada. Hi folks, Lee Diffie with you, and today the fourth round of the IMSA Prototype Challenge hits the track. It's the Mobil 1 Sports Car Grand Prix weekend presented by Acura. Sebring winner Stephen McAleer alongside his co-driver Joe Robillard will lead the field to green today after putting their Robillard Racing Norma chassis on the pole position. Garrett Grist and Rob Hodes will line up alongside them in their K2R Motorsports Ligier, but look out for the points leaders, Austin McCusker and Rodrigo Fluker, who line up third. They have been super fast on the long runs all weekend. And now for a closer look at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, let's join race callers Jeremy Shaw and Brian Till.
Let's take a look at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, just north and east of Toronto in Bowmanville, Ontario, Canada. Sits 2.4 miles of asphalt that will challenge even the best drivers in the world. High-speed turns in 1 and 2 and 8. Best places to pass, maybe braking into turn 5, perhaps braking into turn 8. It's narrow, it's challenging, it's difficult. It's also known as Motorsport, its historical name, now Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Two different chassis today, the Ligier and the Norma, so we'll talk about the differences and the nuances of those chassis throughout these 3 hours, but different strategies at play as well. In the sprint races, the hour and 45-minute races, of which there are 4 in the 6-race championship, you're allowed to run by yourself. That's exactly what Stephen McAleer did at Sebring when he was victorious there. But in these 3-hour races, you are required to have at least 2 drivers. Some of these teams have elected to run a 3rd driver, but how you play those cards, how you utilize those drivers is going to be key. Some of the teams will start, we'll call it driver 1. They'll put driver 2 in at the first stop. They'll go back to driver 1 at the end. Other teams will start with driver 1, and then driver 2 will get in and do a 2-hour stint to the end. That is going to be a massive effort. And for the 3 driver lineups, well, that's pretty straightforward. Drive for an hour, get out. The next guy drives for an hour, get out, and then the next guy takes it to the checkered flag. Pit stops, 2.5 minutes if you change tires, so that's the minimum time that you can spend on pit road from the pit in line to pit out. So that is very well regulated, and the competition is going to be fierce. We've seen a big delta in lap times throughout the weekend.
Yeah, we have, from the fastest to the slowest cars, certainly, or fastest and slowest drivers. But there's pit stops, that minimum pit stop time, 2.5 minutes. The reason for that is that these teams, this is not top-level driving. This is development series that feeds towards the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. So they're trying to keep the cost to reasonable. They don't want people spending lots and lots of money on pit stop equipment and all of that. That is why there's a minimum pit stop time, just to make sure the pit stops are clean and safe.
Are you ready for this? Lined up on the front row, driver's right, the light blue and dark blue, number 10, Stephen McAleer, put that car on pole on the very last lap of qualifying. Green flag waves, and we are racing at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Down into turn 1, side by side.
Garrett Grist on the outside line from Whitby, Ontario. He knows this track better than anybody in this field, pretty much, and he takes the lead heading up to turn 2. Great start by Garrett Grist in car number 51.
And talking to Dakota Dickerson, who runs there in 3rd right now, behind the wheel of the 54. Dickerson and Grist are both in, and a little lockup into turn 3. They're both in the Ligier chassis. That car seems to come to life a little bit quicker than the Norma chassis does. That Ligier seems to get up on those Michelin tires. They felt like they needed to jump out and try to get a lead through turns 2, 3, and 4, and if so, they might be able to hold off the top speed advantage that the Norma chassis seems to have down the long back straightaway here.
Yeah, we will see. That's where they are right now, headed out of Moss Corner up the Mario Andretti straight, but that was a great first lap by Garrett Grist. He's got a lot of experience in all sorts of different cars, and he's taken advantage of that and his experience here on his home track to take the lead on the first lap, and there's no way that Stephen McAleer is going to challenge him before turn 8.
And that is absolutely critical, because now, as Garrett Grist can get some temperature in those Michelin tires, he should be able to pull away if history repeats itself like we think it will, and the Ligier should come alive through turns 1, 2, 3, and 4. What can Stephen McAleer do to defend, though, from Dakota Dickerson just behind? Dickerson and his teammate Dylan Murray won the last round at Mid-Ohio. Look at the cars streaming up and over the hill, down into turn 2. The compression there, just pulling your body not only down in the seat, but to the side as well. Cars locking up brakes into turn 3. It's going to take a while to get settled in.
I think that was Nigel Greensall there in car number 33, locked up the brakes, headed up the hill there to turn 3, but he was able to keep the car on the road. And Nigel, he's one of the older drivers in this field. Oh, one of the older drivers. He's actually medium age, I guess, for some of these guys here. Bruce Hamilton even Bruce Hamilton with his 70th birthday here. He's far and away from being the oldest driver in the race. That would be Dave House, who's 76 years old, 76 years young, I should say, because he won a race last year in the Prototype Challenge, the IMSA Lights category, which was not quite such quick cars here at the LMP3s, but he almost came away with the championship as well.
Number 7 of Max Hanratty under attack from the 55 of Wyatt Schwab just behind him. The bright yellow number 40, David Grant, behind the wheel there, trying to close up on Michael Klemecki just in front in the number 2. When you watch these prototypes come at you, you can get an idea of the 2 different chassis, kind of a little more of an indentation in the nose on the Ligier chassis. And when you look and you see kind of a narrower nose that looks flatter across the top, that will be one of the Norma chassis. From the side, really difficult to tell, but you can kind of get a better idea on these long shots which chassis you're looking at. 3 Ligiers just go by there with the bright yellow 40. David Grant really closing down on Klemecki in turn 5, but you've got to be right on somebody to get that pass done in turn 5, and with 2 hours and 56 minutes to go, it's that risk reward for a pass like that. It's just not there.
No, be patient, I think, is one of the keys here. As we see making a move on the inside there, that is Max Hanratty trying to make a move on. Oh no, he's making a pass there on Wyatt Schwab. That's a great battle there for 5th and 6th places.
Garrett Grist continues to lead here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, but battles all throughout. Max Hanratty in the number 7 has his hands absolutely full of Wyatt Schwab, who's behind, and then a little bit further back, Neil Alberico in his red Ligier under attack from the red, white, and blue number 33 of Nigel Greensall. And Greensall has really been putting the pressure on. Little brake lock up here or there, but Dakota Dickerson is beginning to slip back a little bit, a 1/10 of a second or 2 there in 3rd place from Stephen McAleer. And McAleer now beginning to close down a bit on the leader, and a problem for David Grant. His Polestar entry, number 40, that's at turn 3, I believe, is where the problem is. And usually if there's a problem on the way in, no, I was going to say it a lot of times involves someone else, but not this time.
No, he just made very light contact there with the tire barrier. I think the car should be okay as a result of that. Meantime, as he gets that car back underway again.
David Grant, the younger of the 2 Grant brothers, David and Keith, that run the Ligier out of the Polestar stables. Kenton Cook running with them as the 3rd driver this weekend. A lot of teams opting for a 3rd driver, and you can understand why with the heat. Garrett Grist not pausing for sure. I mean, he is pressing hard. The car really leaping over the bumps there in turn 5, and I wonder if that new paving job is going to be worked on a little bit in between races, because it might be just a little bit washboarding right now as these cars really put pressure on it heavy in the braking zone there. But Grist maintains his lead out in front. McAleer just right there, about a second back. At some point in time, you got to decide, when am I going to start and settle down to just run the pace?
Yeah, that's right, and I think that's probably what Garrett Grist is doing now. 1:15.2 each of the last 2 laps. That was his best lap around by a fraction of a second over the previous lap. And Stephen McAleer settling into second place, Dakota Dickerson in third. But the last couple of laps now, Rodrigo Huffaker in that fourth position has been the fastest car on the track. He does it again that time around, 1 minute 14.808 for Rodrigo Huffaker, the championship leader. And that's about a half a second away from the track record that was set by Colin Thompson in a Norma back in 2017, so 2 years ago.
Garrett Grist in control out front, Stephen McAleer just behind, then Dakota Dickerson, and then you look at the championship contenders, Austin McCusker, Rodrigo Huffaker in the 47. They run fourth right now. They lead in the championship, and it's interesting to watch how that championship is kind of ebbed and flowed. And we talk about Leo Lamelas and Neil Alberico in second in the championship. They've not qualified well the last couple of races. They qualified 9th, I believe, at Mid-Ohio, worked their way back up to a good finish, a second place finish there. But as competitive as this championship is, you definitely want to be starting up front. This is a little bit of a different ball game because you've got a 3-hour race. You've got more time than the typical hour 45, but still, you want to be starting closer to that 47 car that's leading the championship if you want to kind of cut into that lead. 4 points separates McCusker and Huffaker from Lamelas and Alberico. There's a 3-point swing between first and second when you finish a race, so you need to start finishing in front of them to close that gap.
That's exactly right, and it's only a 6-race season, so not an awful lot of time to make up for any early points deficiencies. And for Leo Lamelas and Neil Alberico to be running way back there in the 8th position, that's certainly not what they need at this stage. But Rodrigo Huffaker, the championship leader, he's only in 4th place, so not too far ahead at this stage.
Garrett Grist continues to use his local knowledge to lead here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Still 2 hours and 47 minutes left to go. Rodrigo Huffaker in the 47 has had some good battles, and good battles all around the racetrack. When you look through the running order, the 55 of Wyatt Schwab has been working to try to get around the 7 of Max Hanratty for probably, I don't know, since the drop of the green, I think, and still that battle kind of going back and forth, and this time Schwab gets by with a spectacular move at the end of the back straightaway there. And it's one of those deals where if you can stay on the outside of turn 8, you've got the inside for 9, and that's exactly what Schwab was able to do and picks up the position.
That was a really nice pass, and once again taking advantage of that straight line speed advantage that the Norma chassis has. It's a little bit quicker up the Mario Andretti straight up towards turn 8. If you can position that car properly, it is possible, as Wyatt Schwab just proved, to make a pass. It's not easy though. That was a great effort by Wyatt.
I think it's one of those deals that for Max Hanratty, he did what he needed to do. He stayed to the right and said, I'm going to make you go around the outside of me, and I feel like I've got better downforce in my Ligier chassis than you do, and I'm going to make you go a long way. And Wyatt Schwab said, fine. Okay, I will.
I will, absolutely right. For the last, this time it was Rodrigo Huffaker again set a new fastest lap of the race last time around, 1 minute 14.7, so chipping away another 1/10 of a second on the best lap of the race so far. The top 4 cars now are sort of equally spaced, although I think Huffaker is actually drawing a little bit closer to Dakota Dickerson in 3rd, but having moved up into 5th position, Wyatt Schwab already is edging away from Max Hanratty. So Wyatt Schwab in car number 55, he's actually just set the new fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 14.4 on this lap 11.
Welcome back to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. IMSA Prototype Challenge action continues. Let's join Jeremy Shaw and Brian Till.
Wyatt Schwab is one of the guys in this field, doesn't have an awful lot of experience. He's one of the youngsters in that car number 55. He's only 18 years of age, and he's only done 5 of these races before, and 3 or 4 of them were last year in the IMSA Lights cars. So this is a much bigger car. He did the first two races of this season for the 47 Motorsports team, but then didn't do the race at Mid-Ohio, but back again this weekend. And Wyatt Schwab certainly has done a really impressive job in the opening stages of this race.
Garrett Grist doing a spectacular job as well at the drop of the green. That impressive move around the outside of the pole sitter McAleer for the lead, and that's where Grist remains. Battle closing down for second, third, and fourth, running closer on the racetrack than we've seen him in a while. And for David Grant in the 40, more excitement onto the front straightaway. The car just pushes wide, 4 wheels over the curb and into the dirt. I don't think the officials need to warn him about track limits there. That obviously was not intentional, and there was no time gained. And that's really what they look at. Are you getting an advantage by going off the racetrack? If you are and you're using it to your advantage, they'll close down on you. If you drop a wheel because you're pressing hard and there's no time gained, and in fact there's time lost, or if you're trying to save yourself, if the car's sliding and you've got to use that extra asphalt to get it gathered up, the officials know that. And a problem there, something in the tire wall.
That's Naveen Rao in car number 64.
Nudged into the tires, and well, I can't tell if there's significant damage to the front or not. The tire's banded here, and I can't tell if he made contact ahead of where we see the car sitting and then it rebounded into that position, or yeah, I think that's what happened. The marks head to the tire wall. That's there in turn 1.
Eesh.
So that will be a fairly significant impact.
Yeah, I mean, the cars are doing what into that corner? 135 miles an hour, at least, probably.
Yeah. That sounds about right, and they can be flat through turn 1 in a qualifying trim and with fresh Michelin tires on it, full course caution.
Yeah, that would have been a fairly scary moment there for Naveen Rao in car number 64. That car is it's a cool-looking car, isn't it? Or was.
I was going to say it looked better earlier.
Is it missing its right wheel? Or is that cause or effect? That's the question.
And I'm not sure. And it's so dark. I thought the left rear wheel and tire assembly is missing. The question is, did it depart the chassis before it got to the wall, or is that a result of the contact? But the full course caution is out. Now this is going to cause some people to think, but I can't imagine anybody pitting. We've got 2 hours and 37 minutes to go. The car will run right at an hour on fuel. So if you look to try to do this in a 2-stop fashion, then you want to run to an hour. So that taking this caution, I can't see anybody doing it. On top of that, minimum drive time for points is 40 minutes. So certainly you wouldn't change a driver at this point in time.
No, you wouldn't. And in fact, you can't change drivers under full course caution. In any case, you can come into the pits and do anything else to the car, which wouldn't require that minimum pit stop time. You can come in, for example, and change tires without having to do that minimum. But by doing so, you'd give up the track position. And if you stop now, very unlikely you're going to be able to get to the end of the race from here or from the restart with just one more pit stop. So no, I doubt there'll be any takers here. But it was really interesting that first stint. Garrett Grist running a good steady stint at the front of the pack for K2R Motorsports in that car number 51, local driver. From just a half an hour or so away from here. Huge amount of experience in all sorts of different cars, but loves driving these prototypes. So move across from the open ranks into sports car racing a couple of years ago. He's got this opportunity with Rob Hoders, and he's really, really enjoying it. And I think he's certainly growing as a driver as well. Our pole sitter runs in second place. That's Stephen McAleer in the Norma. He will hand over that car later to Joe Robillard.
Safety vehicle has pulled away. Garrett Grist has the field down at safety car speed. It'll be up to him to decide when to go. A great move around the outside. Pole sitter Stephen McAleer at the start gave Grist the lead. Can he hold it here? And a big jump right in between 9 and 10. Grist in the throttle.
Yeah, Dakota Dickerson, though, was right on the move there at that restart. He's tucked under the tail of Stephen McAleer as they head toward turn 1.
What can Dakota Dickerson do in the white and orange number 54, third in the order? Can he get around Stephen McAleer here in these opening corners. This is where he needs to do it. He needs to take advantage of the cornering capability and how quickly this Ligier chassis comes up to speed. McAleer defensive in the number 10.
Well, he slid wide though at turn 3. That's going to give Dakota an opportunity to get alongside him as they head toward turn 4.
This is what Dakota Dickerson needed, but no, McAleer fights back side by side into the braking zone. Dickerson takes it, but we know that Norma has the legs down the straightaway. If McAleer can just get a good run off of turn 5, he can fight back in turn 8.
Tremendous pass by Dakota Dickerson. I think he knows about the speed of the Norma. He was able to get a really good exit to Moss Corner there and get onto the Mario Andretti straight. I think he's going to be able to hold off the Norma, at least on this occasion. But Garrett Griss is looking in his mirrors and thinking, well, that's good. I've got a nice little breathing space here now.
That's exactly what Dakota Dickerson needed to do. He talked earlier today about the strength of that Ligier chassis, how quickly it came up to speed, and if he could pounce on those Normas if they were in front of him on restarts, he could build a bit of a gap and hold on to it. He'll have about a lap and a half, 2 laps before the Norma really comes back into its own, and in that time needs to put some space between himself and Stephen McAleer.
Quite a bit of shuffling positions on that restart lap. In car number 55, Wyatt Schwab was able to find a way past Rodrigo Fluker, the championship leader. That's number 55 car. Up into 4th place now, ahead of number 47. A couple of places behind him. There was James French. He just held on ahead of Neil Alberico, but now up into 9th place is car number 52. That's Chris Archinaco has managed to find a way past the bronze class leader Nigel Greensall in car number 33, and right behind Greensall now is Michael Klemecki, another bronze category driver.
Dakota Dickerson makes that move coming out of turn 3, and then they run side by side through the high compression, high speed turn 4, flat out into the heavy braking zone. And once again, this is that strength of that Ligier chassis. From the drop of the green, it seems to be underneath the driver while that Norma chassis takes a lap or 2, and that's what Dakota Dickerson was able to do. And in that lap, he's been able to pull out 6 or 8 car lengths on Stephen McAleer. Dakota Dickerson, one of those young drivers, you know him well, Jeremy, from Team USA competition, but an F4 champion, leading the F3 of America's championship right now, winner in Prototype Challenge at Mid-Ohio with Dylan Murray, another spectacular young driver. And for Dakota Dickerson, he's looking at those 2 paths for his career right now, and if he keeps winning races in both of them, he may have his choice as to where he wants to go.
Yeah, I mean, he's just doing a super job. He and Dylan Murray, I mean, 2 really talented youngsters. Dakota, he's almost a veteran now at 22 years of age, but he's one of the hottest properties in the North American racing over the last couple of years. As you say, winning the F4 championship, leading, he won 3 races last weekend in F3 as well, so he's got that championship now, not in control, but he's got a very handy points lead, and with this victory here, it's he's driving beautifully. He's really putting the pressure now on Garrett Griss. He's only about a second behind him.
Dakota not only quick behind the wheel, but a very intellectual driver.
Yeah.
He's a thinker. He's a strategizer. And we were talking about conserving tires. He was talking about the F3 car and the last race weekend that you alluded to, and he said, I knew going in we were going to have to conserve tires throughout the weekend to make sure we had good tires for race number 3. And to just listen to him talk and to have that steady, calm mindset of developing a plan and then working that plan, it's impressive. And it's impressive to talk with him outside of the car, and impressive certainly to watch him behind the wheel.
Yeah, it isn't it? I mean, he is a thinking man's driver, and you know, he's a personable young man, and from San Diego, California, and one of the certainly rising stars in the sport. There's a huge lockup for, I think that was Max Hanratty. Was it Max Hanratty?
Yep.
Yeah. A pit stop there for car number 70. Joel Janko is onto the pit lane. He's the first of the drivers to make a pit stop. I don't know whether this is a scheduled stop or not. He's actually lost a couple of positions at the restart. One of them, he was, I guess he was right behind Dave House in any case, but Dave has managed to get past Brad Baker on that restart.
Well, and if that is a scheduled stop, that's going to be a problem for multiple reasons. One, 2 hours and 17 minutes to go. I don't think that they can do it with just one more stop, and that's just that much more time that Jonathan George will have to be in the car if he's going to get it to the end.
Yeah, true. That's going to be a real workout for Jonathan George. We talked about Chris Archinaco finding a way past the number 33 car of Nigel Greensall on this last lap. That has been redressed, so Greensall back up into 9th position aboard car number 33. That's the Sean Creech Motorsports Ligier. At the front of the field, Garrett Grist and Dakota Dickerson both turned their best laps of the race last time around. 1 minute 14.4 for Garrett Grist. Actually, well, I'm going to say it's 1 minute 14.421. And the reason I go down to the thousandth of a second is because the fastest lap of the race was set by Wyatt Schwab at 1 minute 14.420. So they're just a thousandth of a second away from that.
More pit stops happening. This is the number 9 of Jerry Kraut, who's in, and the 60, the 6-0 in as well. That's Bruce Hamilton. We talked about his 70th birthday today. Jerry Kraut in the 9, and did not see if there was a driver change that went on. Yes, there is going to be a driver change in the 9. I would assume that there would have been. And Bruce Hamilton will climb out of the number 60. Scott Andrews, the young Australian, will take over the wheel of the 9, and that's a long way to go. Just like Jonathan George, I look at this strategy of starting your gentleman driver first and then putting in your quicker of the 2 drivers to do a double at the end. Brutal conditions, especially with 2 hours and 11 minutes to go. Yeah, of course, the other problem is with 2 hours and 11 minutes to go, if the car can run an hour, you're looking at 1 stop and a splash, unless there's another full course caution of a fairly long duration so that you can make up that time.
Yeah, that's true, and that's one of the kind of risks you take by making an early pit stop. It can play out in your favor, but it can work the other way as well. And I would imagine Joel Janko was just sort of feeling the conditions. I mean, it is hot out there. We know the G-forces here take a lot out of your body, particularly when you're not a spring chicken. So I fancy he'd said, look, I've had enough for right now. Maybe I'll get in later on. Maybe I'll do another stop later on. So Jonathan George can take a little bit of a break.
And you know, for some of these teams, they may be thinking, if not now, maybe an hour from now, you know, 3 drivers might have been a really good idea.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. As the heat builds and the fatigue builds, you're more prone to make mistakes. And a 2.5 minute pit stop is a lot less price to pay than making a mistake around Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, because typically when you make a mistake here, it ends up being pretty big.
Yeah, big consequences, aren't there? Because the guardrails here are, well, they're further away from the track than they used to be here, certainly, but it's such high speed, you can have a really big impact here and cause a lot of damage at best to the race car.
Garrett Grist continues to lead. Old school track is what a lot of people consider Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and a lot of people still call it by its original name, which is Motorsport. Battle heating up in IMSA Prototype Challenge for the 3rd position. Pole sitter Stephen McAleer and the number 10 Norma from Robillard Racing beginning to be pressured now by Wyatt Schwab in the 55, and Rodrigo Fluker has joined this battle as well. 3 Norma chassis running very close together, probably only about 1.5 seconds between 3rd and 5th on the racetrack, if at that. And you can't help but wonder, is it a strategy play on the part of Stephen McAleer? Is he trying to save tires as best he can? Or is it that Wyatt Schwab and Rodrigo Fluker are closing in on him and have better cars underneath them right now?
Yeah, it's tough to say at this stage in the race, but certainly if you're looking at the lap times, the leaders are still doing consistent 1 minute 14s, but these guys are a little bit further back. They're doing mid 15s, so they're losing a full second a lap on the last couple of laps to the race leader.
Garrett Grist still out in front, but let's think about championship as well. This event starts the second half of the 2019 season, and you look for your championship leaders, Austin McCusker, Rodrigo Fluker in the 47. They run 5th right now, and Neil Alberico in the number 4 that he shares with Leo Lamelas has been able, well, no, he's not. He's still there in 8th position. So Fluker in 5th, Alberico in 8th, and that needs to get reversed if Alberico and Lamelas want to close in on that championship. And I know that they'll sit and they'll watch the progress of the other car throughout this event and try to strategize around it. Obviously, you want to win every race. You want to find a way to get to the front, but if you can't do that, you certainly want to finish in front of the people that are just in front of you in the championship, so you can begin to close that down.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, the championship leaders, they haven't yet won a race this season, but they have finished in the top 4 in every single race, a third, a second, and a fourth, and it's that sort of consistency that wins championships, no question about that. Just looking at the pace of the race leader, he's just turned a new fastest lap of the race, Garrett Grist, 1 minute 14.371. And that is a new track record. That beats the old mark set by Colin Thompson back in 2017.
Garrett Grist out in front, but right now David Grant trying to close down on the 66 just in front of him. Michael Miller's first run in a prototype challenge car is here this weekend at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. He said the car is an absolute ball to drive. Wish he had spent more time behind the wheel of one. He said he had some opportunities along the way and never found the time to do it, but part of the 3-driver lineup of Will Lynn, Ben Waddell, and Michael Miller. And he said, I am having an absolute ball right now. It may not be quite so much fun because David Grant in the yellow number 40 just behind, really putting the pressure on. And Grant with some exciting moments earlier in the race. We had a problem at the entry to turn 3. And and a big problem here. That's up in turn 5 in the braking zone. It looks like we've had a car go beyond the curbing, make contact with the tire. And that, I would imagine, is going to bring out our second full course caution. Into the braking zone, the contact has already happened. Nose in, significant damage to the tire wall. I can't see the number. Is that Max Hanratty?
Yes.
It is. Yep. Wow. That was the 6th place car. He was in there further than 6th. He was in that battle.
Yeah, he was in 6th position. Yeah, trying to hold off James French, Neil Alberico, Nigel Greensill, all those cars nose to tail with Chris Archinaco not too far behind them as well.
Dickerson on the first restart played it perfectly, worked his way past Stephen McAleer. That was Ligier chassis versus Norma. What can he do here with Garrett Grist just in front? Grist from nearby, just half an hour away. This is his home track. He wants to win here desperately. He wants to put on the best show he can. Once again, jumps in the throttle, coming off of turn 10. And I think caught Dakota Dickerson a little bit asleep at the wheel. He's pulled out a car length or two as they head down to turn 1. And a good move by Rodrigo Fluker.
Yeah.
There at the start. I think he might have picked up a position.
I think so. I think he caught White Schwab napping there, and number 47 car, I think, is ahead of the 55 as they head up toward turn 3.
Indeed he is. Garrett Grist, though, with a great restart, pulls the trigger between 9 and 10, and the car just leapt away from Dakota Dickerson. And you've got those 2 Ligier chassis in front, which seem to get up to speed so quickly, and they have already put 8 car lengths between themselves and Stephen McAleer as they head into Moss Corner.
Just got a note come up on the screen. A car 70 has been assessed a penalty from assistance from behind the wall is considered working on the car. That was during that car's pit stop. It was quite a while ago now, but the penalty has just been assessed, and there'll be a drive-through penalty for car number 70. That is Jonathan George, who is one of the contenders. Or he and Joel Janko lead the Bronze Cup points coming into this weekend by 13 over Lance Willsey. Here's our race leader.
In an hour and 50 minutes left to go, so 2 hours and 10 minutes on this stint. I thought it might go farther than that before they decided to come in and do the pit stop, but no, they will do it now. Grist has been so spectacular in the car. He'll hand that 51 over, and Rob Hodis will take it back on track. 2.5 minute pit stop. Fuel and tires mean it's a mandatory 2.5 minute minimum on pit road. This is where Dakota Dickerson really needs to dig. Tires have cooled off because of that yellow. Now, this lap right here, if you can put one in the books, you could very well end up passing that car basically on this lap while they're, I mean, you're going to pass them because they're going to be in the pit lane.
Yep.
But if you turn in a couple of good laps here, what you may find is when you get back out there, after your pit stop, you'll be in front of the 51.
That's absolutely right. So Dakota, as you say, he made a good restart lap there, pulled out 1.6 seconds over the pole sitter Stephen McAleer, and that MLT Motorsports Ligier, that distinctive orange and purple and white car. You can see Dakota Dickerson pushing really, really hard through his final couple of corners. This will be to complete lap 45.
More cars on pit road. The 52 also in. Archanaco will climb out of the 52 and hand that over to Scott Huffaker. Another 2-driver pairing, and it'll be interesting to see if they switch back to Archanaco at the end. Meanwhile, Dakota Dickerson digging, doing the best he can. Once again, he knows that when Rob Hodis gets back out there, Hodis won't have the pace that a Dylan Murray will, but still, you want to do the best you can, put those laps in after that restart, gain any advantage that you can out on the racetrack.
Yeah, it seems like an eternity for these guys for making the pit stops, but you know, those are the rules, and as I say, they're purely for safety reasons, just to make sure that at this level the drivers aren't having to rush to get everything ready to get back out on the racetrack again. They've got time to change the tires if they want, time to take a little bit of a drinks bottle if they need it, and make that driver change and make sure all the belts are done up tightly. Any drinks bottle that might be connected to for the driver is able to be reconnected in plenty of time.
Dakota Dickerson now leads here in IMSA Prototype Challenge competition from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park after Garrett Grist dives to pit road in the 51 to make their first pit stop. Dakota leading the F3 America's Championship and a race winner here in Prototype Challenge as well. Both Ligier chassis, the one that he drives here in Prototype Challenge, the one he drives in F3, and that really, I think, gives him some insight as to how that manufacturer works. And in fact, he was talking earlier about the things that he can take from the F3 car and apply into the prototype, and the things that he's learned in the prototype that he can take back and use in an advantageous way in the F3 car, and it really shows in the performances that he's had.
It does. I mean, his restart laps here, 1 minute 15.8, 1 minute 15.5 last time around for Dakota Dickerson. The race leaders are running in the mid-14s. Was Garrett Grist before that full course caution. So he's you know, he's doing at this stage. He's doing exactly what he needs. And now Stephen McAleer is coming in under pressure from behind.
Race leader is in. Dakota Dickerson hits pit road, drives to his spot. He'll climb out. Dylan Murray working to get the door open. You don't need to hurry. 2.5 minute stop. You still want to get in and get everything sorted so that you're ready to go in case there's any kind of a problem. Little slap on the back of Dakota Dickerson as he climbs out, says, "Good job, bud. My turn." Climbs in behind the wheel. Dakota Dickerson will help him get his belts on and get ready to go. And Dylan Murray will head out. He's already had, work-filled day competing in the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and now he'll have to get reacclimated and introduce himself again to this LMP3-based Ligier chassis. The braking markers are going to be completely different. The aerodynamics will be completely different, and Dylan needs to take a lap or two to just kind of acclimate himself to the new office that he has to work in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, on the test day here on Thursday, he was hopping back from one car to the other, and after driving the prototype, he got back into the GT4 car, the Mercedes, and he was sort of flying down the hill, I guess, out of 3 and into 4, thinking that's easily flat out. Well, it wasn't easily flat out, and he had to chuck the car sideways to scrub off some speed. It was a big moment for him, and he had a big smile on his face while he was recounting that story to me, but it was a wake-up call for him. You know, he's only 17 years of age, for goodness sake, so he doesn't have as much experience as many of the other drivers out there. Look at the drivers that made their pit stops. Great strategy there from IMSA Motorsports in car number 4. That number 4 was one of the first cars to duck onto the pit lane after the restart, and as a result of that, Leo Lamelas has taken over from Neil. Who qualified that car? Neil Alberico qualified the car, didn't he? So he's taken over that car, and he's got out ahead of Scott Andrews in car number 9.
The performance of these LMP3 based machines, both the Ligier and the Norma chassis, is just so impressive. With fresh tires, flat through turn 1, up and over the hill, diving down to the apex of turn 2, G-loads pushing you to the outside, approaching 3 Gs, 135 mile an hour min speed through that corner. Minimum speed in turn 2, somewhere between 130 and 135 miles an hour. Slight touch of the brakes through the right-hander, turn 3, down the diving left-hand, turn 4, flat out, and then on the brakes hard. The double right-hander, 5A and 5B, also known as Moss Corner, and then onto the back straightaway. And the long uphill pull, a little bend left, a little bend right, and then down to the end of the back straightaway here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Once you get to turn 8, the turn-in is flat as you turn in for turn 8, and then it's just a long deceleration almost all the way to the turn in for turn 10. Through the right-hander 8, then 9, the left, on the brakes hard, down a couple of gears and onto the front straightaway.
Yeah, so he's got a pretty good lead. Number 47 car came out in 2nd place, just ahead of Scott Andrews in car number 9. And there's another pretty sizable back gap to number 54 car. I think that's number 70 car, isn't it?
That is at the exit of turn 5, I believe. The fire that you see out of the exhaust pipe, exhaust on either side, is just extra fuel that's been dumped in once the engine stalled, and once it's refired, that fuel ignites and is spit out the exhaust pipe. So no worries there. Let's see what happens. Gets on that bump, and
yeah, it's where the track's been breaking up, isn't it? The car was just hopping around underneath him.
So that's that line that we talked about earlier. It looks like you're better off to just stay down towards the middle of the racetrack and avoid that bump that's there. It's pretty significant, obviously, when you get on it. And for Jonathan George, just kind of bit him that time. Car looks fine. Get back out. Do it again.
Yep. And a new fastest lap of the race that time around for Dylan Murray in car number 54, 1 minute 14.255 for Dylan Murray. He's running now. Well, Dave House still leads. He obviously he done a great job not only of driving the car but also saving fuel too. It's quite a remarkable effort. He's completed now 55 laps, has Dave House. He remains therefore still 2 laps ahead of everybody else. And here is the number 54 car as it heads through turn 1, and he is trying to track down the 4th place car. Dave House leads, and Leo Lamelas car number 4 in 2nd place. Austin McCusker is right behind him. He's only a second or so behind him in car number 47. That is the championship leader, having taken over from Rodrigo Fluker. So the top 2 cars in the championship running in 2nd and 3rd now, right now, with Dave House not yet pitted. Behind them is Scott Andrews in car number 9. He's only a couple of seconds further back as well. And then behind them is a charging Dylan Murray. But Austin McCusker has just responded. He, on the last lap, has set a new fastest lap of the race. and it's down in the 13s, 13.995.
Well, and that's exactly what Austin McCusker needs to do to close that gap down to Leo Lamelas. Remember, once again, this is championship implications with this. And McCusker, if he can get back in front of the number 4, can put some distance between themselves and the championship. And for Leo Lamelas, he's thinking, I got to keep this number 4 in front of the 47.
Yeah, and there is a battle now heading around up to corner 3 here. This is a good battle now for the lead, and not far too behind them is Scott Andrews in car number 9.
76-year-old Dave House leads Prototype Challenge from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. He is yet to pit, and when he does, this will be the battle for the lead. Right now, it's considered the battle for second place. Leo Lamelas in the number 4 Ligier. Just behind him, Austin McCusker, the 47, the Norma chassis. The Normas have had great straight line speed all weekend long, and this is where Lamelas needs to protect. He needs to stay to the inside. And if McCusker wants that position, he needs to send him the long way.
Yeah.
And I don't think Lamelas really protected very much. And for McCusker, I think he thought about going to the right under braking, but you don't really slow down that much on the way into turn 8, so it's not really a place where you can make a late move. You need to be there when you get to the turn-in point.
Yeah, it's a great battle for the lead, and they're about a second and a half only ahead of Scott Andrews in car number 9. And look here, hats off to Dave House. He's just turned his best lap of the race. He's been out there for an hour and a half. He's just turned his fastest lap of the race so far in car number 86. And of course, he still leads this motor race. Brilliant stuff.
Absolutely brilliant stuff. And for Dave House, he's probably having the time of his life right now. You look a little bit further back, the 9, Andrews, Scott Andrews, young Australian, beginning to close down now on Lamelas and McCusker just in front. For Austin McCusker, he's trying to move forward. Leo Lamelas needs to make time between turn 1 and turn 5, and he did. He pulled out a couple of car lengths, but as soon as you get onto the back straightaway, that advantage goes away. And McCusker right there, what McCusker needs to try to do is stay on the rear wing of the number 4 until if he can do that through the tighter sections of the racetrack, he'll have a good shot down the straight.
Yeah, that's right. You know, that's a really close battle, and Scott Andrews is getting closer and closer. He runs awfully wide on the exit of turn 10, does Scott Andrews in that car number 9 for JDC Miller Motorsports, the Norma chassis. We've got Ligier, Norma, the top 4 positions. Dave House, his last lap, by the way, was 0.04 of a second away from his previous lap, which had been his fastest lap of the race, and he'd just gone blue in sector 1 as well, so a personal best sector 1 for Dave House, who still leads this race.
And obviously has a good car underneath him.
No kidding.
We'll be back to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in just a moment as IMSA Prototype Challenge action continues.
Austin McCusker continues to lead, then Scott Huffaker, Dylan Murray, James French, Joe Robillard. Robillard in the pit lane, as is in French, so that those pit stops will work their way through, and the order will definitely change. For Dylan Murray, he dodged a huge bullet there at the end of the back straightaway. Still being shown in 3rd. 2.5 minutes, the minimum time on the pit stops. And so that will put cars 2 laps down, and then we'll wait for all the cycling of timing and scoring to go through.
That's exactly right. The gap between 1st and 2nd now is almost 20 seconds between number 47 and number 52 after that spin for number 54 car, which also held up number 52 a little bit as well. That cost him some ground, but it's been a great run by Scott Huffaker, and particularly by Austin McCusker in the lead of this race. He's been turning some nice low 1:14 laps. Last 2 laps are both at a 1:14.4 and a 1:14.5. So he's doing exactly what he needs to do at the front of this field. We've got a good amount of experience in these cars now, has Austin, and he's already got a couple of wins under his belt last year. Not that this year, had a couple of podium finishes this year, but he's looking Everything is certainly on track right now for the number 47 team.
There seems to be a sense of calm with the 47 team and McCusker and Fluker. As we said, in traffic, there's the patience, the cautiousness, making sure you're not putting the car in a place where it can be endangered by somebody else's mistake, as the 52, Scott Huffaker, now in the pits.
Of course, 85 laps completed by our first 2 cars, and we're waiting for Dylan Murray to come across the line as well, having recovered from that spin in the 3rd position, but a long, long way back.
Scott Huffaker will stay behind the wheel of the 52 as 4 new Michelin's going on, the fuel going in. And it doesn't matter whether you're changing drivers or not. If you're doing tires and fuel, it's going to be a full stop. It's going to be a 2.5-minute stop. It's exactly what's happening right now as Stephen McAleer flashes by just in front of the 47, Austin McCusker. I would expect to see the 47 in here.
Yep. I mean, yeah, at this stage, 55 minutes to go, there's not much reason not to come in, I would say, right now. He has a pretty handy advantage over everybody else, and I would say it would be a good time any time now to make that pit stop. He can certainly go to the end from here, flat out. He's running, again, another consistent lap. Now, 1:15.0 it was that time, 1:14.3 the last time around for Austin McCusker in the lead of this race, and he's just pulling further and further away from the number 54 car. Next on the road with Huffaker in the pits is Scott Andrews, who's cycled back into the 3rd position at the moment, or I guess 4th it is, with Huffaker having completed already 1 more laps, but in the pit lane. Behind him is Paul LaHaye, who's taken over from Dave House, and now running back up in the 5th position in car number 86 for One Motorsports. Then a long, long gap back to Neil Alberico, who had that penalty, but I don't think he has yet served it.
I don't think he has either.
But he's got good margin now over number 75 car of James French, who's resumed at the wheel of number 75 car from Cameron Castles. Did a nice middle stint in that car, running in the 7th position for most of it. Now the penalty is being assessed, a short pit stop, and that'll be for car number 33. It's all going wrong for number 33 team, isn't it? The Sean Creech Motorsports entry, that white and red, primarily Ligier car number 33. It's running currently in the 14th position.
So that will be a pit stop. They'll have to come in, stop at the penalty box, be held for 2.7 seconds,
because
then release. That's how short the stop was.
Okay, yeah, right.
And that's the way those short pit stops are handled. However much time you were short, you'll come in and you'll pay that back, sitting at the end of pit lane. Then the official there with the stopwatch will send you on your way. Austin McCusker hopes that he's on his way to their first win of the season. He and teammate Rodrigo Fluker, 2 podium finishes, 2nd place finishes in the first 2 rounds of the season, a 4th at Mid-Ohio, and they have been steady, consistent, cautious, measured, and they've been up front here for a large part of the day. 52 minutes to go from round 4, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Dylan Murray trying to close that gap down. Just going to have to see how things settle down, but the 54 is going to need a stop as well, and indeed they are now into the pits. Dakota Dickerson will be taking over the wheel of the 54, and there's probably not a better young driver pairing or lineup down in the Prototype Challenge paddock between Dylan Murray and Dakota Dickerson. For a moment there, I thought that Dylan might be staying in the car, but just taking their time to get the driver change done. Once again, you got plenty of time. Dakota Dickerson now getting his seat insert sorted, and then will climb in as the 47 of McCusker flashes by.
Continues on his merry way, doesn't he? 89 laps completed by our race leader. Another 1 minute 14.3 last time around for our race leader, Austin McCusker. He's really driving absolutely beautifully out there.
Would expect to see them in shortly. 51 minutes yet to go. He'll hand that car over, I would think, back to Rodrigo Fluker, who qualified third. You look at their starts this year, they didn't qualify at Daytona at the Roar before the 24 because of weather conditions, and a lot of teams were just like, we're not going to go out because of the rain and the length of the race. Qualified and started from the pole at Sebring, started third at Mid-Ohio, started third here, and that's that consistency that team and that driver lineup has had. And you said it earlier, Jeremy, consistency is what wins championships. And if you don't believe that and you're a sports car fan, just think back to last year's WeatherTech Sports Car Championship in the GTLM category, and you'll think about Jan Magnussen and Antonio Garcia's championship without a win.
Yeah, can be done. There was an Indy Lights championship that was won by Oriol Servia in, was that 2000, was it? Without winning a race.
Welcome back. You're watching IMSA Prototype Challenge here on NBCSN.
Understand that Dylan Murray's close call at the end of the back straightaway being investigated by race control. The incident involving the 54 and the 2 under review. And they do a great job in race control of making sure that the game is played fairly, and I think that's the important thing about race control, is that you're not there to go out and set up a speed trap somewhere and try to catch people doing things they shouldn't. You're there to watch the sport and make sure that people operate within the rules, and there's a difference in going and looking for it and trying to just make sure that you amend things when something goes wrong. And there's the 55 off going down the hill into turn 2. Back in the day, that would have been a problem before all the extra asphalt was added to the outside. You would have dropped that wheel, you would have been in the grass, and if you were in the grass at 130 miles an hour coming over the crest of that hill, you'd probably be in the tire wall down at the bottom.
Yeah, almost certainly. So Scott Andrews now completes lap 89 to move up into second position in car number 9. What an Ironman stint this has been by him. And next on the road will be car number 52, Scott Huffaker. He's about 10 seconds behind the car number 9 in car number 52. He has made his final pit stop. Austin McCusker, of course, is 2 laps ahead of them, having not yet made his final stop. And then behind Huffaker will be, we're waiting for the next car to come through. It's quite likely will be car number 54. Actually, no, it's Dave House or Paul LaHaye, excuse me, now at the wheel of number 86 car, but with Dakota Dickerson right behind him and about to make that pass. Paul LaHaye also still yet to make his final pit stop of the day.
48 minutes to go from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Austin McCusker out in front with that steady drive, and behind him things will cycle through once the 47 comes to pit road. 47 minutes and 47 seconds to go for the 47. If you believe in numerology, maybe he'll be in the pit lane this time. Through turn 3, and they've done, both McCusker and Fluker, I think, have done a remarkable job, a very professional job of working through that traffic that they've had to deal with from time to time. Very few close calls, very few moments of drama for McCusker and Fluker. Still 47 minutes to go, and if you think about that, that's, boy, almost half of one of their normal sprint races. Yeah. So there's still a bunch of time. You've got to do another pit stop. You need to do it flawlessly. You need to do it without making a mistake. We've seen the penalty that was handed to the 4 team for having too many men working on the car over the wall. And I'm still not sure whether Neil Alberico has served that penalty or not.
Certainly didn't see him serve it. I don't know whether he's managed to talk the team's managed to explain exactly what happened and kind of elude the penalty or negate the penalty. But he's still out there at the moment. Austin McCusker, the race leader, again turning super consistent laps, 1 minute 14.5 each of his last 2 laps, 14.2 before that, 1 minute 14.3 before that. That's really, really nice consistency, and he's following the number 10 car. That was a pole-sitting car, Stephen McAleer, who's retaken the wheel of the number 10 car after making its final pit stop a little while ago. He's now several laps back. He's a full lap behind the number 9 car, which will be effectively the next car on the track. I think the 47 car is going to be able to make its final pit stop and still retain the lead over everybody else, because that's just how good of a job Austin is doing. But he's just following a car that's got really good pace in front of him in Stephen McAleer, and that's makes it much easier, does it not, for Austin McCusker there. He's not going to worry about any much slower cars. The car might be several laps down, but it's running quickly.
And that's absolutely true, Jeremy. You've got that rabbit in front of you. You can follow it. If you get into traffic, you've got that car in front of you that's going to push their way through, open holes for you. You don't need to worry about trying to fight him for positions. Talk about fighting for position. The 52 on the 60, Scott Huffaker. That was a bold move on Tonis Kasemets into turn 10.
Yeah, it was not for position. Tonis is a lap down, having taken over the wheel number 60 car. It started by Bruce Hamilton, you remember, and then driven in the middle stint by Jade Buford, as someone's taking the scenic route around turn 2. Gets away with it though, as Garrett Grist works his way past. Garrett Grist now in the 9th position in car number 51 and trying to track down Tonis Kasemets. Was that Tonis running wide?
I think it may have been Tonis running wide. I think he came over the crest of the hill, got out on the gray, couldn't get the car turned at that point in time.
Tonis.
Yeah,
you're right. Yes, it was. Yeah, so Tonis ran wide there, so that's going to put Garrett Grist up into 8th position.
Great run for that young man. And looking back here at the 86, the bright green and black, Paul LaHaye stepping out of the way as the 19 and the 66 move by. I think that's the 2 as well. Kent Cook behind the wheel of the 40 for Polestar has taken that car over on the last stop from either, I think it was David Grant that was in the car second. It'll be interesting to see the lap times that Kenton Cook put in. I asked Jim Griffith, who runs that program, did you bring him in because of the heat or because of Kenton's experience in these cars and the ability to help you guys a little bit with setup? And he said a little bit of both. It is incredibly warm today, and we had the opportunity to do it, so why wouldn't you do it? And I think that's a great attitude to look at it, both for Keith and David as well, to look at it and say, hey, having somebody else run with us is going to help us both physically because of the loads that are put on us and the demands that are put on us in this car, and if we can put somebody with some experience in our car and give us some feedback and some pointers as to what we're doing, maybe we can find a better setup down the road that's going to help us.
Andrews.
47 out of turn 5. Austin McCusker. Andrews was just coming down the hill through 4. And on that long shot, you may just see the blue number 9 flash by as McCusker heads down the back straightaway. Keep an eye out for the distance, the difference between them. You can measure it if you're at home or sitting beside the racetrack, where do I see that car? Or where do I see the other one? Is it closing down? Andrews has his head down, but McCusker was laying down some lap times just before that pit stop, and with 4 fresh Michelin tires, you would think that the car certainly would be very good underneath him after the stop.
Yeah, absolutely right. And he just turned his first flying lap was a 1:14.7. There's a few cars in the field now doing 14s, including Scott Huffaker in 3rd position, who's reducing the deficit to Scott Andrews by just a little bit, actually by a better part of a second on that last lap. But now Austin McCusker is certainly looking golden out in front. Scott Andrews could probably, I don't think you can even see him on the Mario Andretti straight, to be honest. That's how far ahead he is, over 16, almost 17 seconds now. But there's all sorts of other battles going on further back, and there's a particularly intriguing one, I think, between number 60, which is Tony Kazimitz, and Kenton Cook in car number 40. It's a battle for 9th position. They're a lap down to the leaders, but they're having a good old tussle there. Not too, and yeah, they pulled away now from Nico Riga in car number 55. We had that off earlier on.
And Austin McCusker has not skipped a beat when you look at his performance from before the pit stop till now. A 14.5 the last time by, another quality lap. And for Scott Andrews just behind him, the gap is going to get bigger because he's at a 15 flat. He doesn't want to hear that. He's digging, he's pushing, and every time he comes by and the crew tells him the split, it gets bigger. It's disheartening.
Yeah.
You're thinking, what can I do? What can I do to claw down a little bit, maybe a little later in a braking zone, maybe a little earlier to throttle? When you do that, then you get a little wheel spin and you think, I've got to save the rear tires. I can't throw that away. So trying to find the speed without burning the car down and running the tires off is a challenge. All the while, you're exhausted.
Yeah. Having said that, I mean, to finish on the podium in one of these races is no mean feat.
Oh.
And for Jerry Kraut and for Scott Andrews, that'd be a great result.
Absolutely.
I'm sure they weren't. They'd have dreamed of finishing on the podium, but I'm sure they weren't expecting it. So it's been a great drive by both of them. Jerry did a nice job to start off, and then this has been an Ironman stint from Scott Andrews in 2nd place.
Remember, they had the 5th place finish at Mid-Ohio under very difficult conditions, and they're backing it up here, showing that that was no fluke. They did not run at Daytona. They ran at Sebring. Didn't have the best finish in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but still a run to the checkered flag, made it to the end, and then came back strong at Mid-Ohio with that 5th place run. Kenton Cook in the 40, looks to the inside, and then he locks the brake, gets the back of the 60. There'll be a review here.
Yep.
And Kazimitz around. That's that move into 5B where you think you can, and then all of a sudden the door closes, and just a little more pressure on the brake to keep from hitting the car in front creates the lockup, and then what do? Hit the car in front.
Yeah, exactly right. As soon as you start thinking about it, it's going to happen, doesn't it?
So McCusker now with 17.4 seconds over Andrews. Then Huffaker, who's turning in lap times that almost match what McCusker's turning in.
Yeah, and now McCusker's actually got himself behind a little bit of traffic as he heads over the brow of the hill. That's the number 19 car, which is driven now by Kyle Masson, who's a quick youngster as well. And he's on the verge now of going 2 laps down to our race leader.
You talk about the talent there. Won the North American Endurance Championship in the WeatherTech Series in 2017 with wins at Sebring, the Rolex 24 at Watkins Glen, and Prototype Challenge category. So Kyle Masson certainly knows how to drive a prototype of this type with this kind of horsepower, this kind of grip.
Yeah, very, very true indeed.
The old Prototype Challenge car was very different than this LMP3 based machine, but the experience transfers, and McCusker transfers around the 19, clears that hurdle.
Yeah, he'll be delighted to have made that pass. Next car ahead of him on the racetrack is the number 75, which is James French, another guy with a huge amount of experience in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship as well.
It's co-driver with Kyle Masson.
True. Oh, true. Good point.
So all those accolades that I just gave to Kyle, well, James French has them as well.
Yeah. The guy I'm watching right now is the third place car, Scott Huffaker. The gap between second and third, Scott Andrews, to Scott Huffaker, it's now been down below 5 seconds. It was back on 96. It was 10 seconds between them. Now on that 103, it's half of that. And we've still got half an hour remaining in this race.
Car 40 penalty, incident responsibility, a drive-through. That's what we saw in turn 5 for Kenton Cook getting into the back of the 60. And it doesn't matter if you didn't mean to. It doesn't matter if you're sorry. What matters is it happened, and Kenton Cook will have a drive-through. This was the incident. Cook looks to the inside, thinks he's going to be able to get it done, and as Kazimierz turns in, just a little right rear lockup, it looked like, from the 40, and the car just loses its rate of deceleration a little bit. Can't stay out of the back of the 60, and with Tonys Kazimierz already turning the car, that little nudge on the right rear just sends it around. He ends up backwards, and Kenton Cook will end up driving down pit lane.
Yep, so he will give up then, that is the 9th position he is in at the moment.
Inside half an hour to go from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, the IMSA Prototype Challenge. The 50th year of IMSA, celebrating what a great anniversary it is for the series and for sports car racing throughout North America. Here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, Austin McCusker, Rodrigo Fluker lead, and this is going to be big in their championship hopes if it ends this way. Well ahead of the number 4 of Neil Alberico and Leo Lamelas, and that will help them extend their championship lead. Still a long way to go, 29 minutes and change, but the 47 has run a flawless race. Both drivers not putting a wheel wrong, being cautious, and the car looks solid.
IMSA Prototype Challenge action continues from Canada right after this.
And this is where I'm all in favor of knowing who's racing around you, and for Nigel being several laps down and being in the middle of 2 cars that are battling, you would like to think with his experience that he'll say, go ahead, slide on by. It's exactly what he did into turn 8. And now for Scott Huffaker, he has a clear shot of the rear wing of the number 9 just in front.
Yes, he does. This is really going to be an interesting battle. Scott Huffaker's done a pretty good stint himself, but Scott Andrews, he got into that car shortly after the 45-minute mark, or around about the 45-minute mark in this race. So this has been a long and arduous evening's work for the Australian. Now he's got that intense pressure from behind.
Closing in on 20 minutes to go here in round 4 of the IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship. Austin McCusker, Rodrigo Fluker in the 47 for 47 Motorsports have been flawless all day. A good lead, 15 seconds over Scott Andrews, but the battle for second continuing to heat up and to close down. The 52 of Scott Huffaker really beginning to close down on the blue number 9 of Scott Andrews. Huffaker has worked his way past Nigel Greensall.
Yeah, and Alberico has just conceded the position to Austin McCusker, or Austin McCusker has managed to squeeze his way past. So that's a headache that Austin McCusker no longer has.
It was 1.8 seconds at the line the last time by. The difference between Scott Andrews and Scott Huffaker this time by stays about the same with 20 minutes to go. If it finishes this way, McCusker, Fluker, they'll extend their points lead over Leo Lamelas and Neil Alberico from IMSA Motorsports in the 4, and Scott Andrews, Scott Huffaker being there in between, as well as Dylan Murray and Dakota Dickerson in the 54. That really robs points away from Alberico and Lamelas. If you're going to finish behind somebody, if you finish right behind them, that's the least amount of damage that can be done. But when you finish multiple places behind, the gap in the championship continues to grow, and the light really beginning to come down. And I would imagine sitting in one of these prototypes in the cocoon that the cockpit is, it's going to seem pretty dark in the cockpit right now.
It is, and having cleared that traffic, Austin McCusker now back down into the mid 1:14. So this is a really good drive. And Neil Alberico, meanwhile, he's got his mirrors full of James French in kind of a 75. So that battle for 5th and 6th is very far from over.
And now just over a second between Andrews and Huffaker. The 52 closing that gap, 3/4 of a second that last time by. Close enough now. You can see the suspension working on the 9 in front, and the closer you get, the more real it seems. Out of turn 3, looks like Huffaker in the 52, that red, white, and blue from PR1 Matheson, gains some time. And indeed he does, as they come down into turn 5A, 5B, onto the back straightaway. This is where the 9 has had the advantage, the Norma chassis with the top speed advantage. If Huffaker can stay close, perhaps he can really begin to lean on Andrews through that 1, 2, 3, 4 combination where the Ligiers seem to have the advantage. Closing down, Andrews is going to get stuck in some traffic here in turn 9 and 10. The left-hander, then the right. He's there. Huffaker's there, looks to the inside through 10, nothing doing. He needs to be patient. He's got 17 minutes yet to go, and Dakota Dickerson in 4th, well back.
Yeah, no challenge at all from behind, that's for sure. So Scott Andrews now, these are, it's a Norma against a Ligier again. The Norma, as we've seen through this race weekend, has been slightly quicker on the straights, but the Ligier handles really nicely through the corners. It looks after its tires perhaps a little bit better as well than the Norma, which tends to slide around a little bit more with that slightly less downforce. So this is a really intriguing battle that's going on for 2nd and 3rd positions.
Traffic just in front, the 66. Ben Waddell, they'll be on the radio with Ben saying, hey, you've got this battle for 2nd place coming. Do not get involved in this. Waddell stays driver's right. Andrews around in the 9. And Huffaker didn't get the best of drives off of 5B, and it's given a couple of car lengths back to Andrews. Far from over. McCusker, a comfortable lead, but the fight for 2nd continues. Scott Andrews in the 9. Dives down to the apex in turn 1. Scott Huffaker just behind him in the red, white, and blue 52. This is the area where the strength of the Ligier chassis, the 52, really seems to shine. Closing down a little bit at a time through turn 2. Closes yet again at 3. But you can't pass here. You can't get it done. You can get close, but you can't get it done here. Is he just taking the measure of Andrews in front, trying to figure out when he's going to do it, where he's going to do it? Or is this all he has right now?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, lap times for these two last time around, 1:15.8 was a lap time for these 2nd and 3rd place cars. They've been having to deal with some slower cars, so that's we'll wait and see until they get a clear lap to see exactly what they're doing.
Scott Huffaker needs to remember what he just did in turn 5. That was the best run that he's had off of there in the last several laps. Remember where you placed the car. Remember that the bump didn't have as big of effect as it did before. That's where you want to be. And you can see his loss down the straightaway was much less than it's been in previous laps. So he is now closer to Scott Andrews in front, and he will close that gap considerably once they enter the tighter sections of the racetrack from here, turn 1 all the way to turn 5.
Yes, he will, but making that move is certainly not going to be easy for Scott Huffaker in the car number 52. He'll be getting coached here by his team. But you know, look, that he has not yet had a podium finish in this series. So for him, this is his first season of racing at this level. He didn't compete in the first race of the championship this season, so you know, it's been a really steep learning curve for Scott. He's had a couple of disappointing results so far, so this has been by far that team's best result. If he can finish on the podium now, he should be pretty pleased with his day's work.
Well, absolutely he should, and he's a protege of Bobby Orgel, who runs PR1 Matheson. He's been with Bobby in different series in the past and has moved into this prototype challenge type car, and he and Chris Archinaco have done a tremendous job. Archinaco, one of the more pleasant people you'll ever meet down in the paddock, loves to talk about racing and just always has a smile on his face. And for he and Scott Huffaker, as you say, to come away from here with a third place finish, a podium, that may seem like a victory. Second would be even better, and it's not over. 6 minutes, 15 seconds to go. And right now, Huffaker closer than he has been the entire time as they head down into turn one. This is where he closes down so well on the 9, but what he's going to have to do is get a pass done early, I would think, in this section, or perhaps in turn 9 or 10, keep Andrews behind him and pull a gap through the tighter sections of the racetrack, because you know that Norma chassis is going to run away down the straightaway. Let's see, he stays. No, he goes a little bit higher, and you can see the 9 just kind of leap off. Still a better run than he had previously off of 5B for Scott Huffaker, and that helps him a little bit closer. The other thing that's going to help him, or it could hurt him, 3 lapped cars in front. They're all going to have to work through this lap traffic. And it looks like these cars battling. I think the 60 is one of those cars, Tonys Kazimets.
I think number 2 is in there as well, and they are battling for 9th and 10th positions. Actually, 2 has just got past the number 10 and the 60. All those 3 cars are battling for 9th, 10th, and 11th. The car on the move there is Michael Klemecki, who just passed the number 60 car, as indeed also has Stephen McAleer.
Scott Huffaker is the faster of the 2 cars. His lap time that last time by, a couple of tenths faster than Andrews. Andrews now stuck behind the 60, trying to find a way by, and Huffaker needs to go with him if he wants to keep in touch, and in fact comes off the corner. Kazimets says, have at it, boys, lets him through. But it did cost Huffaker just a little bit of time. See if he can get the good run off of 5 again. Stays high, gets on the curb. That's not what he wanted to do. Loses maybe a half a car length.
Yeah, but he's doing exactly what he needs to. He's getting off well enough to get a good drive, pretty good drive up the straight, and there's no way with the Norma's straight line speed advantage that Huffaker is going to get close enough at the top of the hill at turn 8 to even think about making a pass. So, he's doing exactly what he needs to do at this stage in the race, is Scott Andrews, and the time continues to tick away, now under 4 minutes.
And he can't let frustration get to him, because I know how frustrating it is to watch somebody walk away down the straightaway and then have to claw your way back, get back to their rear wing, and then have them walk away again. So it's one of those things where you just have to focus forward. And a loose moment for Huffaker down at 2 at the compression. This is where he needs to press. If he can stay a little bit closer to Andrews as they go on the back straightaway this time, he won't get a pass done, but he will be closer down in 8 and 9, and perhaps he can get the pass done in this section of the racetrack.
Ooh,
lock up for Andrews.
Exactly, that's the one mistake he's made in this race. Scott Huffaker perfectly positioned, great dive down the inside now, but has Andrews got the straight line speed to get that pass? Ooh.
Oh, and he didn't get right soon enough.
Oh, he's alongside him.
He didn't get right soon enough. Huffaker needed to get to the right side to block Andrews and make him go the long way, but he's close now. He's close, and he knows he can put pressure on. He knows he can get Andrews to make a mistake. 9 and 10, he'll be all over him as they come in here. 2 minutes and 4 to go, and he slides up the inside. They make contact. Both cars off the racetrack.
that was
Huffaker takes the position. What will the officials say about this?
Well, I don't know, but to me that was just really good, hard racing between those two. He stuffed it down the inside, yes, and yes, there was some contact. It's a tough one, but it was a great move, really. I mean, that was a move of a 19-year-old, wasn't it? No harm, no foul, no fear. And
you know it's going to happen. Andrews needs to know it's going to happen, and I think he does. He starts to close the door. You see the 52. You see Huffaker get on the apex curb a little bit, and when he does, he loses the front end. Car pushes out wide. There's a little bit of contact. Man, that was a bold pass by Scott Huffaker. I mean, look, it was marginal, certainly in terms of being fair. Well, it wasn't fair, was it? You just stuffed it down. But look, that's what motor racing's all about for me, and I don't think we'll see a penalty there. It is under review, which is certainly fair enough. But look, at this stage in a race with two young chargers going for it, I think I'd be surprised if a penalty is handed down for that one. If it didn't happen on that lap, it was going to happen on the next one. Yeah. Because that was going to be one of the spots that you had to attempt it. And for Scott Huffaker, he was behind on the straightaway. He's not going to get it done at the end of the straightaway, so he is at a deficit there. The only advantages he had were in 9 and 10 and 1 through 4. So it's kind of one of those things where you knew the attempt was going to happen in there somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think the white flag came out around last time, but it will this time. We're less than 45 seconds remaining now on the clock. I don't think he took the white flag. Can't quite see the...
So the incident under review, but for Austin McCusker.
No action.
No action. So for Scott Huffaker, second place belongs to him for the moment. Unless Andrews can fight his way back, I'm not sure that's going to happen. And Austin McCusker sees the white flag fly. It's within their reach. What's been missing is the victory. One more look. Huffaker to the inside. Gets alongside, and I think Andrews sees it, but he gets on the curb right there and just loses the front end. You can see the wheels turn, but the car pushing to the outside.
You can. I mean, he certainly didn't try and drive Scott Andrews off the road. He was absolutely alongside at the turning point, albeit completely crossed up. And then you could see through the windscreen his left arm just full across, full lock on the steering wheel to turn right there to try and make the corner. So I think that's a great call by the stewards. A brilliant pass by Scott Huffaker. The pass of the season in the IMSA Prototype Challenge Series so far, at least.
Took 2 hours and 59 minutes to get that pass done. But that is some of the magic of the IMSA Prototype Challenge Series. The young guns, the veterans, those who have won championships, those who will, those who have won races, those who will again. But for the first time in 2019, your championship leaders, Austin McCusker, Rodrigo Fluker, the car in the hands of McCusker onto the front straightaway. 47 Motorsports, they take the victory at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.
Welcome back to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, where round 4 of the IMSA Prototype Challenge is complete. Austin McCusker and Rodrigo Fluker have taken the checkered flag for their first win of the season and their third podium finish. It's time to hear from them.
I mean, the guys at 47 Motorsports, they gave us a great car. We rolled off fast. It wasn't the plan to do a double at the end. We were supposed to put Rodrigo in, but we had a good stint the second run. But then we decided to keep me in and brought her home. Can't thank the guys enough.
Yeah, we trust completely in the whole team. This is a teamwork, so we trusted Austin that he had a good pace. He had a good difference behind. So I think this was the correct option. And during the whole weekend, we have showed to 47 Motorsport that we have the team, we have the car fast, we have a really good pace, and well, we have the win now.
Good stuff. Congratulations all around. McCusker and Fluker take the victory. Scott Huffaker, what a drive. He and Chris Archinaco, they're going to be celebrating big time here in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And I know for Scott Andrews and Jerry Kraut, I mean, there's a huge finish for them as well. We talked about a strong finish of 5th at Mid-Ohio and now on the podium for those two. They're going to be disappointed. I would imagine they're going to be angry with what happened in turn 10, but in the end, I think you'll look back at it and go, some good hard racing.
Look, Jerry's a racer, Scott's a racer. He knows that he's been in those sort of positions before, and Jerry Kraut, you know, I think he will appreciate he'd be disappointed not to be finishing second place, but still a podium for Jerry Kraut and Scott Andrews, a really, really good day for them.
The next race for the IMSA Prototype Challenge comes in late August during the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship weekend at VIR, Virginia International Raceway. We'll see you then.
This copyrighted telecast may not be reproduced, retransmitted, or used in any form without the authorized written consent of the International Motorsports Association. We would like to thank all of our loyal fans for your continued support, and we hope you enjoyed today's broadcast.